So, dear students, today's lecture is about post-structuralism. In previous lecture, we studied about structuralism. Before going ahead, one major difference that I can make clear over here is structuralism is what is this, and post-structuralism is how is this. So, both are related theories. We cannot separate them, that structuralism is different, post structure definitely there are differences, but post structuralists are actually theories that talk about how did this happen to create actually it's all fight of meaning, that how meaning is deduced in literature. So first of all, we'll see that what does this post-structuralism? Post-structuralism names a theory, or it can be just one theory. It can be a group of theories concerning the relationship between human beings, the world, and the practice of making and reproducing meaning. So three important ingredients you can see. First is that post-structuralism is not just one theory. There can be a lot of theories. Deconstruction is, for instance, a sort of a post-structuralist theory. And then we can have three things. There's a triangle that is important: human beings, world, and meaning. And all these things, when they interact in a trio, we can get some sort of meaning. So, on the one hand, post structuralism affirms consciousness is not origin of the language we speak and the images we recognize so much as a product of the meaning we learn and reproduce. So it's very important. So meaning is not somewhere sometime with signifier and not even with signified. There can be a lot of other things which we have to take into consideration while getting meaning. On the other hand, communication changes all the time, with or without intervention from us. The importance of language. Definitely, language is an important tool in literature and brush in painting, and all the time the pen is to create meaning, brush is to paint meaning, so on and so forth. Most of the time, the language we speak is barely visible to us. After food and shelter, which are necessary for survival, language and its symbolic analogies exercise the most crucial determinations in our social relations, our thought processes, and our understanding of who and what we are. That's basically all can be done through language. So, post structuralism proposes that the distinctions we make are not necessarily given by the world around us, but are instead produced by the symbolizing system we learn. So there is a difference, that how do we interpret that particular symbol? It's not outside, it can be from inside. How else would we know the difference between words? But we learn our native tongue at such an early age that it seems transparent, a window into a world of things, even if some of those things were in practice imaginary, they were not concrete, no more than ideas of things derived from children's stories. So it can be just a sort of a story, and in practice, in reality, it can't be anything. So it's very important theory that we have to understand. Meaning, another dimension. It's all fight of meaning, and post structuralism is basically all fight of meaning and deducing. What's meaning? Where do meaning come from? The answer seems to vary with the context. As a description of the post structuralist challenge to inherited beliefs, it may mean nothing much post structuralist, more specific than new. Post structuralism or post structuralists begin with an account of how we are able to mean, and goes on to conceive of human beings as animals distinctively possessing and formed by this capability. Meaning, we are, that's to say, creatures of difference. We are different from each other just on the basis of meanings. Meaning, sources proposed did not depend on reference to the world or even to ideas. On the contrary, he argued that if things or concepts language named already existed outside language, words would have exact equivalents from one language to another, and translation would there be easy. But it's not so. Sometimes we can't translate one thing into another language because of meaning. Difference, not reference. Previously in structuralism, we were just studying difference, and here reference basically, sign, signifier, signified. It was a sort of reference we people studied. But post structuralism says no reference, difference is important. The simple inference that meaning is differential, not interferential, has profound implication for understanding of the relationship between human beings and the world, and many of them remain controversial even now. The history of post-structuralism is the story of the way socialist ideas were taken up by later generations, especially in France, and particularly after the Second World War, when the history of National Socialism and a French collaboration with it seemed to demand an explanation that existing theories of culture were unable to provide. The key term is this in this story is difference. So, Ferdinand de Saussure and the sign. Traditionally, words had been thought of as signs. What is a sign? The sign seemed to represent a presence that existed elsewhere, to stand as a sign of something. In everyday English, we still refer to the meaning behind the words as if meaning existed somewhere on the other side of the speech or writing. So, Saussures' work changed that for him, meaning resides in the sign and nowhere else. In order to make the point clear, Saussure divided the sign into two. On the one hand, the signifier. What is signifier? The sound or the visual appearance of the word, phrase, or image in question is the signifier. On the other, signified its meaning, surface structure as well as deep structure. So, in ordinary circumstances, the distinction is purely methodological. We rarely see a signifier which does not signify or mean something, but an unknown language consists entirely of signifiers in isolation. For instance, if Chinese is there, German is there, we people are not well conversant with that language. We can see a lot of sounds which are just jumbled for us because they all are signifiers. So we hear sounds and assume that they signify since we see native speakers apparently communicating, but to us they mean nothing. Or we see a page of impenetrable written characters. Neither element of the sign determines the other. The signifier does not express the meaning, nor does the signified resemble the form or sound. On the contrary, the relationship between the signifier and signified is arbitrary, is human created. It does not have some sort of logical relationship. For instance, there is a one word chair, kursi. So why we call it chair? Why we don't call it table? Though there is no relationship exists there. So there is nothing doggy about the word dog. That can't be, since the French recognize much the same characters in the unchained like in French word. So, Rene Magritte's word paintings vividly exploit the arbitrariness of the relationship between the signifier and meaning. Children used to learn to read from the primers that showed pictures of the things with their names underneath to teach them what the written signifier meant. So, Magritte's The Interpretation of Dream is composed of four such pictures, but only one of them, the valise, is appropriately labeled. Magritte places his misnamed objects against what the frame indicates are window panes, but these panes are painted black. The window is opaque. It does not allow us to see the world of things on the other side of it. And this is just true in the case of rightly named valise as it's of other things, other images. Both the signifier and images are on the same side of the glass if glass it is. Here, language is not a window into the world. So, language is not something that we people can see outside what's in Japan, what is in China, what other places there. So, the primacy of the signifier. Poetry too works by proposing parallels, inviting the reader to make surprising connection between apparently distinct signifiers. As Pound's delicate imagist poem on a station in the metro surely deserves the attention it has elicited or got by drawing an analogy that depends on the conjunction of predictability with perfect visual appropriateness. The apparition of these faces in the crowd battles on a wet black bow. So we can see how these poems creates meaning. Where is the meaning? Within the words or within something else? So the poem isolates these images, so similar and yet so different from the noise that would surround them in actuality. The signifier separates off the comparison it creates from the distinct experience as they might exist in the world of reference, and in the process produces a set of association. The delicacy and vulnerability of faces say that surely relegates the reality of crowds and trees to the very edges of our interest. So this is how the signifier are important and meaning is created. Another example, one more instance, William's highly patterned poem, The Red Wheelbarrow, seems to assert the materiality of the objects it names. Oh, red wheelbarrow, glazed with rain water, beside the white chickens. So there are no comparisons this time. Instead, you might want to insist the poem offers the clearly defined colors and shapes of referential things. If we look again, there is another way to read this short, simple text. The red and white in this poem are unqualified and thus bright, shiny, glazed. If this is farmyard, it's one without shades or mud. So this is how meaning has been created. It's all fight of reference or difference and how meaning is created in this different type of a poem. Actually, the post-structuralists are concerned they are different from practical criticism, from structuralists. They are not at all concerned with the author, they are concerned with the work. So that's why the depth of the author. How can we decide which reading to settle for? Traditional criticism would say we should ask the author, and if the author is dead, as in the case, we should read biographies, diaries, or letters until we can guess what the author might have intended. Post structuralism, however, disagrees. If language is not ours to possess, but always pre exists us and comes from outside, and if poems issue from language, not from the ideas which are language's effect rather than its cause, there is no final answer to the question of what any particular example of language in action ultimately means. But a specific instance of signifying practice can mean whatever the shared and public possibilities of those signifiers in that order will permit. So we have to see how those signifiers, words in that particular process mean. So possibly some sort of meaning can be got while leaving aside, setting apart the author, the writer. Citationality is definitely to cite some person to give reference. It's also it's not only the level of the individual word, phrase, or image that meaning depends on difference. Margaret's painting alludes to old-fashioned school primers and crucially differs from them. To say what's being cited in the picture is to grasp part of what we call the point, which is to say the meaning. The painting's primer does not work. Its window resembles and differs from the window we know. Its blackboard is not an ordinary blackboard. It's different. This is what we call post structuralism. How that word is there. So references are not references, they are different one. Moreover, the interpretation of dream also alludes to a long tradition of Western painting, invoking the convention of Renaissance realism and its convincing depiction of individual objects, but locating itself in as modernist by putting them in unlikely places. In the same, we can see sometime modern art, abstract art, the eyes in the stomach. So these are very different, and you have to create meaning because reference is different, meaning is different. So in the same way, imagist poems depend on their meaning not only on the combination of individual words that compose them, but also on their intertextual allusions, resembling and yet breaking with the lyric tradition, which so often establish a speaker or at least a mood or state of mind. The red wheelbarrow is like a fragment of a poem. On the other hand, it differs from a fragment by offering a statement that appears complete. So, in abstract art, I can give you example. If a painting is there and one eye is just visible in the inside the what we can say stomach, so we can see that it's all material. People are nothing with thinking with others. So, meaning is this that people think from their bellies, not from their mind. So when their bellies are filled, definitely they will start thinking from their mind. So this is a concept what we can say that what is usual meaning and what is unusual meaning, and this unusual or different meaning is a part of basically post structuralism or images poems too. The reader. Next, an important person in post structuralism is Roland Barthes. Uh, Symbolism, actually, his symbolic codes are very important. He gave there. So, wants us to read the text itself, not something else. What we imagine would provide a clue to it or a guarantee of correctness of our interpretation. But he's not arguing for subjectivism. Instead, his reader is not an individual, not a real person at all, but the space on which all the quotations that make up a writing are inscribed without any of them being lost. So, such a space does not exist except as an ideal tale, a timeless utopian model reader. In practice, some of us will see some of the possibilities, some others, and the text itself keeps its secret about which is right. Indeed, it becomes unclear, just as what right would mean, though it's still possible if we do not know the words or we do not pay sufficient attention to them, we miss a citation or mistake the genre to be wrong. So, this is how he clearly, deftly says that where is the meaning and what's the role of the reader in that particular case. So, thank you. There were certain examples that I quoted over here, and hope we'll be talking about this theory later too.